that has a carpet feel with something that's satiny.
Yeah.
You know, no, that isn't something that Carrie Bradshaw started on Sex and the City. You know, it's something that has some history in it. There is a designer, and I'm going to call his name wrong, but it begins with an A. Azzedine Aliyah. And
I've seen it written.
And if I pronounce his name wrong, sorry. But he was really big with leggings in the 80s and, you know, these bright colors and wide shoulders. And if you look at a lot of the clothes that are out now with the leggings, you know, designer Derek Lam, and he did a lot of leggings.
Leggings are back,
Douglas
aren't
Hannon.
they? Yeah.
Exactly. And so to understand where fashion is now, and for me, because I need to tell people where the trend is coming from, and if I can go back and tell you from what particular designer, it's really big. It's great. There's another designer, Bonnie Cashin, who was a woman who was major in handbags, and you know, she was one of the people that helped Coach become what it is. And so to understand where Coach is going, you have to kind of understand where they went and why they're going back to all these classic looks. So it really helps to know. I mean, every time I go to those retrospectives, I feel like I learn so much more because it's, you know, it's fascinating. And plus, when people were doing things years ago, it was for some social reason, and it was always like, you took off your corset, oh my God. You know, it was like the worst thing you could possibly do.
The corset meant something else then than it does now.
Right, or so now it's like this sexy thing that people want to wear, but, you know, before.
Then they were taking them off. That was the fashion statement,
exactly.
Right?
So
in the 20s, I guess, they took off the corset.
Probably around 1910 is when they took it was the beginning of the flabber season. The beginning of the flabbers when they took the corset off and they got the long drop-waist dresses.
Yeah.
But that corset was so key to being a woman. Like, it was something that all aristocratic women did and put on, and then they all threw it away, and then now they're bringing it back, and they're wearing it outside. And it's just,
so it's another expression of womanhood at another level.
Exactly.
Sort of. Now, what do you say to people that say that it's all very frivolous? Because, you know, I'm sure you must get that a lot.
I do. I used to have a tagline at my old paper that said, fashion is important because everyone gets dressed every day. And I still kind of believe it because even people who say that they don't care about fashion, that's their fashion statement, that they don't care about fashion. I won't spend a lot of money on. You have people who say, I don't spend a lot of money, but I still look good. And in a lot of ways, they could be right, but that's their statement. They're not afraid to go to Target or H&M or, you know, somewhere else and buy clothes, and they shun it. And then you have people who say, I only wear the best. But that's their statement. And if you look at them, they probably will have the T-Mobile sidekick, and they've got the Dior bag, and because it's such an image for them.
Yeah. It's all an expression of themselves. It's an excrescence of their personality.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think when people say that fashion is not important, then they basically say that they're almost frivolous on what they think is almost frivolous, and no one really wants to.
Well, it's interesting that you had told me before we began to speak that you wished you had majored or double majored in journalism and art history. So you do see fashion as art, I assume. And do you think that that has become more accepted now in culture, that fashion is a form of art? It's artistic expression? Actually,
I think the exact opposite of that.
Really?
I think when as American fashion has, or even LA, not even American fashion, because, you know, in New York, American fashion was considered New York. But if you really look at what's happening and on the fashion scene, LA is everything that people is wearing is coming from LA, and it's very utilitarian. It's expensive. That's where your $200 jeans come from.
So it's less aesthetic, you think?
It's definitely less aesthetic. It's definitely more. It's definitely more utilitarian and, you know, basic. It's expensive, but
why does it cost that much then?
Because fashion at its core, fashion is a status symbol at its core. It will, you know, it's like a car. It's like, you know, and now people are looking at their household appliances the same way they look at fashion. So it's like having that big mixer. What's that one that when everybody loves? It's really great. My mother has one.
I don't cook, so I wouldn't.
Oh, there's this mixer, but it's like having a widescreen TV. It's you know, it's another extension of one.
But isn't that one particular group of people's idea of fashion? There are others for whom it is really very much an aesthetic, tactile, artistic
But those people
expression.
spend a lot of money on their clothes.
Well, do you have to spend a lot of money on clothes?
I don't think you have to spend a lot of money on clothes, but I think that fashion is, I think there are some people that look at fashion as art. But the majority of people look at fashion as something that they need. They don't look at it as fashion, they look at it as clothes and something that they have to wear.
Yeah.
That is useful. The flip side is that the people who look at fashion as clothes, as people as something to wear, those are also the people who will spend $300 on a pair of Timberlands because they're sturdy. And that may not be fashion as in fashion, but it's still something that you put on your body.
Right.
And it's clothing, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
It's a matter of where you're drawing the line here and making the definition. That's interesting. You covered the Emmys, I think. Was that in August?
Yes, I did cover the Emmys.
And are you going to be covering the Oscars?
From here.
They're not going to send you.
No, they never. I cover the Oscars every year, and we watch the Oscars and.
But they don't send you. Oh, can't you wheedle a ticket? You have to see it close up.
Not really, because you're just really looking at the clothes. I mean, and that's the thing about journalism too, or especially covering the Oscars. I mean, I see a dress. It would be great if I could see the dress up close, but I can see it from my television, and still, because I understand culture, or because we understand culture, or because we've been studying it, you can still draw the links. And I probably would be spending so much time noshing and looking for people like the guy from Grey's Anatomy, who I'm deeply in love with.
McDreamy?
McDreamy, the whole Grey's Anatomy cast that I probably wouldn't get much time.
Okay. That seems to be a trend, too, that show. As a black woman, do you feel that you have a particular interest in ethnic fashion? I mean, and do you think that ethnic trends are more prevalent in our culture now, and the mixing of them and the taking from different cultures and so forth is more a part of fashion than it used to be?
I think hip-hop culture has had a major effect on fashion since in the last 10 or 15 years.
In what way?
In the sense that hip-hop fashion was the first time in American fashion history where designers and well-known people had to acknowledge that the particular look came from the street. They could not explain it away. They couldn't, it wasn't about appropriating a look in the 20s like the flappers. It was something that was so germane to the culture that you could not say that you did not see it on kids who were part of the hip-hop generation first. And because that happened, you had major companies like Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren and all these other groups, all these other businesses rethinking their advertising campaign, rethinking how they did business to get that dollar. Because if you said publicly that dollar wasn't important, then you just looked like an idiot. On that token, I think this was even though these aren't the first designers ever, because there are tons of black designers that came before, and the woman that designed John F. Kennedy's, Jacqueline Onassis' wedding dress was an African-American woman. So by no means was this the first time that we saw this in history, but it was the first time that these designers were given a platform they took the platform. They weren't given, because they had the money. Yeah. So you had Baby Fat. Now, whether or not you believe Kimora Lee Simmons is a designer, that's on you. But you had, and you had, even before Baby Fat, you had these guys from Queens, FUBU. But you had to pay attention to them. And then eventually you had Baby Fat, you had Russell Simmons, you had Rockaware, you had all these different labels demanding space on the runways in New York City during the biggest fashion event in America for those years. And so I think that people were forced to see it. And as a black woman who is not only a black woman, but who is a major part of who grew up in hip hop. I mean, it's the soundtrack of my life. So
You grew up in Queens.
I grew up in Queens, New York City.
Yeah.
I remember when Run DMC came out with My Adidas, and it changed how everybody was wearing their sneakers and what they were doing. So I'm very sensitive to it because I feel like I own a part of it. Although I'm not a designer, although I'm not a business owner in that sense, I own a part of it because I wore the clothes, I pieced together the outfits. I thought, I was salt and pepper. I had the haircut and the door knocker earrings, and I was. So I feel like it's a part of my history, and I'm very sensitive to it because I want to see, I want it to be recorded right. And as a journalist, you want to see that, and it's really, on some level, it's really heartening to finally see something that African Americans did. Now, whether or not you agree with hip hop or like hip hop or appreciate hip hop today and care about Chingy and the girl in those jeans, I mean, it's a whole nother issue. But you can't deny that it was the first time that designers were taken seriously and given credit for what they came up with. I don't know if that answer makes sense.
No, it did quite well. I guess I want to ask you finally, because when I read your columns, I'm always thinking, well, you're coming up against clothes. You're bombarded with clothes all day long. How do you resist buying all the time?
I don't.
You do buy all the time.
I don't buy.
And what do you buy? What really tempts you?
Well, you know what? I don't buy all the time. I mean, one of the things is I'm bad at the beginning of seasons because I've seen all the stuff from the season before, and so now I know what I want. Like, I almost have a mental list. Like,
so you have an idea of 1 or 2 or 3
items that I want.
What did you want this year, this fall?
This was, and I don't realize it till I actually get into the store. But this year, the dress, I really wanted a wrap dress. I bought 2. Well, first I wanted a burgundy wrap dress, and then I wanted a black one. And then I was at Lee Fay at this event, and she had this it wasn't a wrap dress, but it was a really pretty striped dress. It was brown, it hugged the curves, and I was like, that's a great dress. And then once I bought the dress, I needed boots. So I went to Macy's and I bought
Isn't
some
that
boots.
always the case?
I bought these boots.
Oh, they're very nice.
And then I realized I needed tights. And tights are tricky because you can pay lots of money for tights or you can pay not lots of money for tights. And I am one of the people who do not want to pay a lot of money for tights because I rip them very easily. So I found that there's a bunch of stores on Chestnut Street, not on the other side of Rittenhouse Square, so on the other side of Broad Street, where you can get decent tights for like $5, $7, $10, and they're pretty and they're opaque and they hold up. And then I needed a bag, so I bought a bag. But I'm a type of person that I piece together. I mean, I've never been a real label person. I don't think you can be if you pay rent.
Right.
Every month on time.
If I can just recap here, because we're running out of time. You got the dress, the boots, the tights, and the bag. So you got the complete outfit. What about earrings? That doesn't count.
It does count, but that's kind of stuff that you can piece together. I mean, if you're always out, I mean, and not to mention there are so many places in Philly where you can get, like, you can go to the Adende Festival and you can get earrings. You can go to the African American Festival that's down at the pier, and I'll probably buy earrings there. There's a lock festival that they have once a year in October, and I'll buy jewelry for my hair. So it's really a question. I shop at H&M, I shop at Target. I mean, I think I wrote columns about that too.
Well, I'm going to stop you here, and after the show, I'm telling the audience I'm going to get all these places that you go to. But we'll have to wrap it up. I could go on for another half an hour with you, Elizabeth. It's been great. I've been wanting you on the show for a long, long time.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us today at the Drexel interview.